Z 2019-09-01, Warren County Planning Commission, an ordinance to amend Warren County Code Section 180-49.3, microbreweries to include usual and customary activities associated with microbreweries and amendments to this section in compliance with state code regulations, and to amend section 180-20 to add activities and events associated with microbreweries other than those that are usual and customary to microbreweries throughout Virginia. And number one, that's a mouthful. Number two, I believe that's Mr. Perry.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, good job getting through there. So yes, tonight's public hearing is for an amendment to section 180-49.3 and to add 180-21D41, as you mentioned. The proposed amendment we did discuss last month. It has been revised per your request. We deleted on 180-21D43A through D and left, which was E, assemblies of more than 100 people. And then we also removed H, which discussed private gatherings for the property there. Everything else has remained the same. Again, this is in, reaction to interest in local breweries and their impact on agritourism, which we've recently approved. And this is similar to the farm winery code that is also within the zoning ordinance currently. And this just allows microbreweries to host events that are associated with such as listed in the Virginia State Code. Again, it's the same as last time. We just removed those sections as discussed. I will make sure that these are reflected in the minutes with the secretary. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. This was on the Board of Supervisors agenda already for them to advertise pending your decision this evening.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions real quick before we open the public hearing?
I wasn't here last month, but basically this just parallels us with the state code.
Correct. It gets us in line with the state code and also just aligns it more with the same provisions that are allowed in the farm wineries. The earlier code was a little more restrictive, so this just kind of opens it up similar to that of the state code.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? All right. We will open the public hearing for this application. There has, make sure I get the correct one. There has been nobody to sign up for this, so does anybody wish to come and speak for or against this application? Yes, sir, I see your hand.
Yeah, you come up here.
You need to come up here and you need to state name and address for me, sir. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Hey, Bill.
Oh, hey.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Richard Sargent, 3016 Reliance Road, live right across the street.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
I said, well, you're saying Reliance Road, when you say across the street, you're talking about?
Yeah, from her.
Yeah, okay.
For a microbrewery.
I know, yeah.
Started off, it was a little small microbrewery, which was fine. No problems. They're, how far off the road? 200 yards?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Please.
Yeah. And that was fine. It was no big deal. Had a few problems with people coming out there spinning wheels, like, I guess they had too many beers or whatever. And they sat there at the end of the driveway. When they're sitting there, if they're turning, like going up towards Middletown, they'll sit there at the end of the driveway with their lights right in my house. And that's a little bit of a problem when I'm trying to go to bed. And so, now they got this bigger building. And I think it was the 12th. Y'all had that event over September 12th?
The grand opening?
Whatever it was.
So you're speaking about a specific property in the county?
Isn't that theirs?
This is about a,
Microbrewery.
well, within the county. You're
Yeah.
talking about a very specific property in the county, is what I'm getting at. That's all I'm saying. So you're talking about a very specific
I
property
guess so.
within the county versus this is a county thing And this can be county-wide is what I'm getting
Well-
at. You could do this down in Bentonville is what I'm getting at.
And certainly residential area in Bentonville is gonna be a problem there too.
I understand what you're saying, but
Yours is the next one on the
Huh?
list. Yours is the next one on the agenda.
we have another public hearing for Backroom Brewery.
We have one specifically for.
Oh,
next.
okay.
So-
Well, I don't agree with about the county residential areas for any of them, anywhere in the county then. That's-
So what I'm getting at is this is countywide, where you're talking about a very specific parcel.
Okay, well,
If that makes sense.
county-wise, if you put them in residential areas, you're gonna have problems. So,
Okay.
if, that's my.
So that's really your statement then, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all, I'm not trying to cut you short.
That's fine,
I'm just-
that's fine.
I'm just saying you're talking about a very specific spot, and this public hearing for this particular application is really
Well,
countywide.
I retrofit.
See what I'm saying?
Countywide problem. yeah.
But I understand what you're saying, so.
But you put them in the middle of residential areas,
It's
can I bring up a point on that? Just for instance, they had that event. All right, they had people parked within 40 yards or less of the road. Bunch of guys standing out there at the pickup truck, open beers, hooping and hollering. You can't even go out and sit in your own yard without being disturbed by that small. How it was a little small one before, it was fine, back off the road, but now it's becoming a problem. So that's about all I can say on that. So what's the next one you're talking about, Simone?
The next one is actually for that particular parcel that you're referring to off Reliance Road.
Okay.
And that's a different,
That's
a
like
conditional
12 or
use,
something?
it's a conditional use permit for holding,
It's up next, you can speak to
Events.
that.
for events associated with a microbrewery, which is basically weddings and those
You
types of
still
things.
doing that tonight?
Yeah.
In just a few minutes,
All
yes,
right,
sir.
I'll be back.
So. Thank you so very much. So there's that. So does anybody else wish to speak for or against this application? This is countywide, not a particular parcel. All right, thank you, sir. And please state your name and address for the record, sir. Thank you.
My name is Roger Robinson. I live at 2918 Reliance Road. And what my question is it has activities and events associated with microbreweries other than those that are usual and customary for the breweries. Now, what exactly is that? Things that aren't customary.
Well, I can't give you like a direct answer like this second, so I'm not an attorney, so I can't.
We can answer, once the public hearing is closed, we can answer.
Okay,
So I need to wait.
so that's a question, so we got that covered, so
We'll address it.
All right.
we can address it, but I can't just spout out what I think it is, so.
All right, I appreciate
If
it.
that makes sense. All right, thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to come and speak for or against this application? All right, seeing no one coming forward, we will close the public hearing. All righty. So we have some questions, so before we proceed with any other questions from the commission, do we have an answer for that gentleman's question?
Joe, do you have a copy of the state code?
Yes.
Do you want to read it? The section about the usual customary?
So usual and customary activities and events at licensed breweries shall be permitted unless there is a substantial impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It doesn't discuss exact, specific types of activities. And where he is talking as part of this would be, these unusual other than events would be the CUP thing. That's what they're applying for. The usual events are tastings and those beer tastings. You're bringing out a new beer, something like that. The other than those that are usual, that's when you would start to fall under that CUP use for number 43.
And we've determined that to be,
Over 100 people.
just a farm winery ordinance. We've just kind of mirrored that ordinance and applied it to farm breweries.
Correct. The state does not define what that number is, but I think 100 is that one where you really start to find that impact on the health and welfare safety of the community. That's what was defined for the farm winery, so that we kind of mirrored that for this one. We use that.
Yeah, we have researched other codes
Mhm.
on winery ordinance in the beginning.
So to clarify, the other than those are, the code will allow it, but you have to have a CUP.
Correct. That one is for number 43, and that will fall under the CUP. List uses that are permitted by the CUP, and that would be other than those, and this was the section that had multiple events in there that we deleted. That was like concerts, all these different. So then we just changed it to assemblies of more than 100 people. Again, amplified noise, those things are addressed in the code and the supplemental regulations, hours. We do have a noise ordinance, so those things are still addressed per our code and the Warren County Code as a whole.
All right. So make sure everybody's on the same page. This is for the county, this is a county-wide thing, not just a particular parcel, so.
So, Mr.
Everybody's-
Chairman, if I can get this straight, if somebody wants to put in a brewery and they have an agricultural area and all that is met, and if they decide they would have to come before the planning commission and board of supervisors to get approval for that to begin with. Okay, it's not by right, is that correct?
So microbrewery, the farm brewery is by right.
Okay.
The brew pub that she has is by conditional use permit. The microbrewery is a farm brewery, you have to be growing hops on the property.
Right.
So that is a by right use. Agritourism, such uses are allowed by right by the state code.
So if I had a brewery and I'm growing my own hops and all that, and then I say, okay, it's going to come up again, but for this ordinance is that if I say, okay, I want to start having weddings here, then at that point I have to apply for a conditional use permit.
Because that's not a usual and customary.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we all got straight on that. Okay. That was my only question.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns, comments
Take a motion.
on this? Well, I'll take a motion if we have to. If you got any other questions, I'm good for that too.
Finding the proposed zoning ordinance amendment is appropriate for public necessity, convenience, and general welfare and good zoning practice, and leave the planning commission forward the proposal amendment to the board of supervisors with the recommendation of approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion with this application? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is still a public hearing, and it is a property that I have been associated with and have performed work on in the past, and therefore I need to abstain from that. As an engineer, I've done engineering work for her, so I'm abstaining, and I'll hand the meeting over to Mr. Myers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item is item 2019-09-02, Backroom Brewery LLC. A request for a conditional use permit for events associated with a microbrewery. The property is located at 150 Ridgemont Road, identified on tax map 11 as parcel 16B and zoned agricultural. Ms. Logan.
In your packet?
Right, it says Ridgemont, but it is Reliance Road. It is Reliance.
It is off of Reliance, but the road is Ridgemont that you access it by. In the packet, you will find a statement of justification from Ms. Clifton. She explains that she wishes to utilize the 8,000 square foot building that was recently constructed on her property for larger events. She currently has seating in that building used for beer tastings for her microbrewery. She continues to use the other structure for the brew pub and restaurant. There currently is not a listed use in the agricultural zoning district that allow these events in conjunction with a farm winery. which was the zoning ordinance amendment that you just heard. That was for the entire agricultural district. So this would allow events of 100 people to be conducted. Over 100 people requires a conditional use permit. Again, we just did it for the blanket 100 people and over. And this CUP would cover all events on the property. I did send this to outside agencies. We just received VDOT comments this morning. And I just would give those to Ms. Clifton. We received health department permits, or health department comments a few weeks back. They did have a concern about her drain field, as you can see on page 2. The staff recommends the following conditions if the planning commission is to approve of the request. The applicant shall submit a sketch to the planning department showing where the parking area for employees and guests will be. The applicant shall meet all VDOT and Warren County Health Department regulations and requirements, and any outdoor lighting fixtures shall be full cutoff, pointed downward. And I'm happy to answer any questions. The public hearing was properly advertised and all adjacent property owners were notified, and Ms. Clifton is here too, if you have any questions for her.
Thank you so much. Anybody got anything before we open the hearing? Okay, if not, I will open the public hearing. No one signed up, but I'm assuming Mr. Sergeant Robinson might have something to contribute.
Sure. Just the legalities for the record, please identify yourself and your address again.
Richard Sargent, 3016 Reliance Road, right across the street. On her website, she has weddings. So is she gonna limit these weddings to a certain number, and is they able to hold weddings without a conditional use permit? 2, the noise from the bands, the first night she was open, I think it was just a special event, Valentine's Day. The band was so loud at my brother's house across the street, he couldn't even listen to his own TV. Now my house, I didn't hear it, but in his house, I went up there because he called me. And I went up there and I went, man, his new house, pretty nice house, but pretty loud, pretty loud. And still with the people, I think a while ago I said that them guys was 40 yards from the road. They was 40 feet from the road, I'm sorry. It wasn't 40 yards, 40 feet. Sitting out there on the back of a pickup truck, 4 guys, open beer containers on the back of trucks, hooping and hollering. Then the problem with the traffic coming out of there, spinning wheels, sitting in the driveway, their lights shining in the houses across the road. They don't have any respect for neighbors around them. So that's my biggest concerns are those things. So that's about all I got on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Roger Robinson, 2918 Reliance Road. My property is about 100 yards from her drive, and I get the same problem that Diggy mostly does. Cars turn around the driveway and things like that, and they do speed up and down past there. And it's like he started to say earlier, years ago when he first started out, they came around with wanting to sign a paper, which I was glad to. I don't mind small business. It was herbs and stuff like that, a nursery. Well, that's fine. And then a few years later, they come by and wanted to start a little microbrewery. Well, to my understanding at that time, when I signed the paper, it was supposed to be up in behind their original building. Well, come to find out, it was in the same building, and then now they want to do this, so it just seems like everything is just getting larger and larger and larger. And that's one of my concerns. I think that it's a high dollar beer joint. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed.
Is there another place that people could park, like around back, maybe so that you wouldn't have the issue with the people out at the road bothering other people?
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm out of stepping out of turn. I'm not sure when it's appropriate for me to speak.
You can go.
Also, for the record, identify yourself and your address.
My name is Billy Clifton, and my husband and I are the owners of the property in question, which is 150 Ridgemont Road, Middletown, Virginia, 22645. And I am the business that is the subject of the complaints that you just heard. I have to say I'm rather stunned. I've never heard a peep out of either one of these lovely neighbors, other than support and, you're doing a good job. And I don't remember Roger being in the brewery, but I certainly do remember Richard being in the brewery and having nothing but positive and supportive comments. I am here tonight to request that we be granted the conditional use permit for holding events that are larger than 100, which I understand is 100 is by right, and more than 100 requires an extra permit. We are Virginia's first farm brewery. We are located on a farm, and we are very proud of that. And it is agritourism, and it is agriculturally zoned land. It's a good thing. The state of Virginia is very supportive and has basically encouraged all counties to bring microbreweries into existence on their plan. So we were the first, we're the trailblazers, and yes, we have grown. We've been successful, and we have grown, and at this point, we are, as always, following the rules and asking for the permit to entertain larger groups. As far as the, I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to address complaints or whether I'm supposed to address the letters from the health department or what, but I'm prepared to do either one or all. Any special requests?
Back when you were just doing the herbs and this type of thing, you'd have your festivals. How many patrons would you have at any given time for that?
Oh, for the Virginia Herb Festival?
Yes.
If the weather was good, we had as many as 2,000 people on site, off and on during the day, not all at once, but yeah, we would always get a permit for the festival, and we would always have a real good turnout if the weather was good.
Okay, I just trying to get a feel for traffic and this type of thing.
And then I read through on these large events, you're gonna have to do some special things with your septic pump out and a few things to do
That's
that.
that's our solution. The septic system was built to accommodate 100 guests per day. And at the time, we had no idea how many guests we'd be expecting. We didn't know if we were going to have 30 people on site because of this building, or whether we were going to have 200 people on site. But we did have a very good track record because we had a septic system in existence, a small one before that, so we knew what we were using, and we did our best to forecast. But at this point, with our request to have more than 100 people on site, we need to think about how we might, what strategy we might use to protect our own system and our own drain field, and that's the solution. Is that we pump everything out and provide capacity for up to for more than 100 people. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
We have to address that, and we are. And I actually have a letter from Greenway, from Mr. White, Stephen White, and I brought copies for everyone. If you're interested, I'd be happy to let you have copies of this from Greenway, which describes the strategy for handling any or any guests in attendance over 100 in one day.
The question about parking, is there another area you could use for parking that would help alleviate somebody being 40 feet from?
We do have a large parking lot in the back.
Yeah.
We have been parking people in the front. Well, it's not really in the front, it's on the side of the new building, and we can back them up. We could back them up, yes. Farther back towards the back of the property.
Yeah, that might help your neighbors.
Yeah. I'd like to point out that our normal hours of operation are 11 till 9. So we're not open, at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're not a saloon.
Right.
We're a farm brewery. We're family friendly. We're pet friendly. That's our identity. With weddings, there are very few weddings that are over at 9. Although there are some. I shouldn't say very few. There are actually lots of weddings that start at 4:30, and we limit the time. We limit the time that the weddings are allowed to be there. We limit that to 5 hours. So if there is an occasion, like the occasion that Mr. Sargent and Mr. Robinson are describing, where there are people on the property later in the evening, then rest assured, we are trying very hard to get them to go home. We want to go home. And I'm trying to remember the date that y'all are describing. And
September 12th, and then whenever Valentine's party we had there, there was 2 I'm talking about specifically.
well, I didn't even have a band for Valentine.
This is about 5 weeks ago, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was the grand opening. Yes, we had a big crowd that day.
Up till about 10 o'clock.
Sorry, so sorry. Yeah, and so they're talking about our grand opening, and yes, we had a big crowd that day. We had many more people than we expected. Again, it was not an event that we booked in advance and we knew people were coming. We just had a whole lot of support from our community. People came out in droves to wish us well, and it was great. But it didn't go until 10 o'clock at night. It went until the band played until maybe 6. But the other date that the gentlemen have described was indeed a wedding, and my staff was indeed trying to get these people to leave. But it wasn't midnight. It wasn't 1 o'clock in the morning. It was, I think the curfew on that one was 8:30. They were supposed to be out by 9, and they were still there by 10:30. So I heard about it. My staff was trying very hard to get them to leave, and I guess the message that I'm hearing is that we need to figure out a way to make. I mean, you hate to call the authorities on your guests, but I'm happy to consider and to address any issue like that, and do my best to prevent it from happening in the future. Again, we're not talking about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We're talking about 10 o'clock in the evening.
Do you have any plans to limit the number of weddings that you have a year, or?
No, plans to limit. I do not have plans to limit. I think weddings will pretty much limit themselves. They're pretty much a Saturday night thing. And there are only so many Saturday nights in a year.
The number of times you would be having weddings in a year, say. say 10 weddings a year.
Like I said, I think the weddings will pretty much define themselves. People, we don't have people that want to get married in January or even in December. Weddings are pretty much June through November, and there are only so many Saturdays during that that period of time. If I was lucky enough to book a wedding every weekend, during those months, then it would be shocking, but it would be good. The average size wedding that we've had so far has been under 100. There are very few that are going to be over 150, and maybe one or two that would be as large as that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Ma'am, do you think you need some professional security there to kind of put the squash on any misbehavior that's going on? I mean, you do have
Thank you.
alcohol
That is-
involved,
Yeah, that is something that we have considered.
Would you have any issues with putting that in a conditional use permit? I think that people living near you have the right to be able to go to bed at 8:30 or 9 o'clock without the commotion that went on. Now, I understand you're saying that happened one time, but still, your staff might be good at catering to your customers, but a security people might be better in getting them out of there.
As a matter of fact, I actually do have that language in my contract, that if they're a wedding that's over, I don't think it's 100, but I think maybe there is a number on it, I'd have to double check, but that there would be a charge for security. So no, sir, I would not have a problem with that. That's everyone's concern. We are in an agricultural zoned area, but we have neighbors, and we respect our neighbors, and we value the relationship that we've always had, the good relationship that we've always had with our neighbors. So no, I would not have a problem with that at all. So, I mean, we want them to go home too. So it's in our interest that they.
This isn't something that would be going into conditions and this type of thing, but I remember meeting you when you first came here for your application. This is the first time I've met those two gentlemen, but all three of you seem like reasonable people. I think that there might be possibly some way they could come over sometime and sit down and help you with a little quality control, and maybe all of you reach some common ground.
They might be able to do the
That would be very
security.
nice. I like them
Not
both
security.
very much. We've been good neighbors, and we've neighbored together for what, over 15 years.
Yeah, particularly if you've got headlights shining through your door and you have overserved patrons sitting out there at the intersection.
Sure.
I can see his point of view.
Very open to that, yes, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Are people allowed to drink outside, or are they supposed to stay inside the?
They are. They're allowed to go out onto the lawn. Just like with the winery, you can take your glass out, and it's we have beautiful scenery, and like I said, we're pet friendly, so they don't wander. They stay pretty close to the buildings.
Do you have any signs up saying, no alcohol beyond this point?
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else got anything?
I think as far as conditions go, if they're through with this thing, it is getting, the farm brewery thing and all that's fine, but when it gets into these special events and we get over this 100-person number, we are getting kind of a commercial feel. On a commercial level, certain setbacks and buffering are required. So I think somewhere in the conditions, there actually needs to be a number put off of Reliance Road. They get some spillover parking, and people, it's easier. I know what the people do. I do it myself. I park close to where I can get out.
Yeah.
But if that area needs to be roped off or something done, but it needs, I think it needs to be a number. I don't know what the number should be, and I think there ought to be a number in footage from Reliance Road. We're gonna keep cars back this far. Do we have anything similar in commercial as far as setback against, residential as far as like, I'm trying to get a number, and I didn't know if we had something similar in code somewhere else.
The whole thing I was getting at here while you were talking, thinking that you start getting to 100, plus and that type of thing, the way you're starting to compete with country clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for weddings.
It would have a similar, I like the idea. My son just got married weeks ago, and literally there was no venue in our county, in our home county, to do 150 people. We ended up going to Middletown, and we looked, around, and there was no advertised venue to do over 100 people, and I think it would be nice to be able to do that in your own county, but we want to do it where it's not a hindrance to the neighboring property. So, and then if the one that I was at, we did have a curfew, and it was strictly enforced. So I think it's part of the conditions for weddings or whatever special event it would be. I would like to see a time. We're going to be done by this time. They had us a time the event was over, and then they give us an hour to clean up. It's basically what it was. Event's over at this time, and an hour after that, everybody should be
You're out here.
So you got to go. So for me to support this, I need a footage off of Reliance Road, no parking, or no event. The event can't spill out that far. And then I think it needs a time curfew in writing, and then not to wish any argument between neighbors and stuff, but when things do get out of your control, if I were taking their money, I wouldn't want to call the sheriff's department either. But if everybody knew the rules and the neighbors called, you couldn't get rid of them. Maybe, or the security thing's a good idea. It's already in your thing there, but you get a couple, they're problem people, and you can't know ahead of time whether you're going to have one or not. So then at that point, hey, everybody knows the rules. We're going to be shut down at 9. Everybody has to be gone off premises at 10 as far as guests. And then if that neighbor still got that problem, by all means, he ought to call the sheriff's department. And then
Don't disagree.
the sheriff's department can enforce these rules in SSUP. I think that would be fair. So I'd want to, what's a good footage off the road?
I'm wondering with all this, if it wouldn't be better to table it till next month and let staff do a little research.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Postpone.
Postpone, thank you. Postpone, all right.
Also, during that period of time, maybe you could look into the security issues there and be able to address or give us some information on what you're coming up with that. I really think that's going to help you in the long run, which is also going to help the neighbors. Professional people in there getting any rowdy people out is going to be necessary. You've got to expect the worst, unfortunately.
And we don't expect the worst. We've never had a problem with any of our customers, creating problems. And I'm remembering this event, and the report that I heard was that there were some friends of the bride and groom that weren't even in the wedding that showed up and wanted to help clean up, and that the event was over and they were asked to leave, and they didn't appreciate that. So, yes, sir. I'll be happy to look into a security solution to this problem.
Again, I don't know if moving your driveway down would get it out of his line of sight or what, but maybe, listen, you guys, sit down and see if you come up with some common solutions.
We'll figure it out.
That would be good.
Mr. Petty.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chairman, with the ordinance that was just approved, they do have set hours from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. for hours of operation for a microbrewery. That's in alignment again with the farm winery, and it's also in alignment with the noise ordinance, which goes from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'll also note that in the supplemental regulations for the microbreweries, the noise is at 60 decibels, which is 2 decibels less than actually allowed in the agricultural district. So we kind of regulate it so the noise is just a little bit less, since it might be more often. But again, so we've kind of restricted that a little bit, and the hours are consistent with both the noise ordinance and other existing zoning.
So,
We're okay for a postponement?
I'm okay for any motion you want to make.
Oh, let's find the right page so I can get the right.
What's the next date of our meeting?
Next-
November meeting.
Yeah, our November meeting.
Yeah, that works.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The 13th, November 13th.
Let's see here.
You want to make a motion to postpone?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item till November's meeting to allow us to do some work on setbacks and rules for this type of event as it's new to our county.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Motion's made, properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you. We'll readdress it in November.